Welcome to our election special podcast where we interview another independent candidate fighting the mainstream political parties to become part of the new political landscape on July the 4th. He is no other than Professor Kamel Hawwash, who is a former chairman of the Palestine Solidarity Campaign and is a professor at the Birmingham University Engineering Department. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Thank you very much indeed for inviting me.
It's a great honor to have you on the program today.
Thank
And
you so much.
as we were talking before we start recording, that this is going to be one of the most interesting elections in living modern history. What do you think?
I think so. I mean, first of all, people are not really going to be voting for the Tories. Let's be clear. They're disintegrating as we speak. And then they look at Labour. I say that the reason for such a lead for Labour is how poor the Conservatives are.
But that's still quite bad in the sense that you have a Labour Party which looks not much different to the Tory party.
Yeah, but as I say, that's why the gap is only because in the polls, in my view, because the Conservatives are so poor. It's not a policy issue, and it's not a leader issue. So you have in Rishi Sunak someone who hasn't convinced the people when he's been Prime Minister that if he is re-elected for 5 years, he will fix a lot of the problems that Britain has. On the other side, you have Keir Starmer, who has displayed such dishonesty that people are questioning whether they should really vote for Labour. I'll remind the listeners that when he stood to become leader, he made 10 pledges, and he's reneged on every single one of them. Now, when you do that, and you're asking people to trust you, it becomes very difficult for people to say, yes, I will vote for that. But the driver, when we speak to people at the door, is to get rid of the Tories.
But again, look, it's a very sad indictment that if we return a Labour majority, based on what you've just mentioned so far, what does that say about the British electorate? That they're just sending another party which is just as bad, because don't forget, it's big business now that dictates policies.
I think it's also the fact that this is British politics. Mm-hmm. The British political system is effectively like the American, about a two-party system. Yeah. You either vote right or left of center, whatever it is. So parents, as you know, will vote the way their parents voted, and then the youngsters come in and they vote. So Labour has had, for example, the Muslims vote Labour, which they have taken for granted. And the question is, will Muslims this time say to them, no, thank you, we know what you're about, you're dishonest, you take us for granted, and therefore we'll go and look for someone else to vote or not vote. And I say to everyone, please vote. Don't stay at home. Even if you go and you put an X across the whole sheet, go and make sure you exercise your right. But more importantly, why is it different this time? I think the rise of the number of independent candidates in this election is the main feature that we have here. So right at the beginning, I'll never forget when I was speaking in Saliog, this lady ran up to me and she said, thank you so much for standing. I really didn't know who to vote for, and now I have an option. And so independents provide this option. Yes, there are the Liberal Democrats, there are the Greens, but people look at the Liberal Democrats, very few MPs. They look at the Greens. A lot of people like some of their policies, particularly on climate change, but they look back and they say they've only had one MP. So it's not such a strange thing to elect one independent when the whole of the Green Party has only had one MP in Parliament.
Tell us, Professor Kamel, what is it that you bring to the table for the electorate of Saliog?
Okay. First of all, my own desire to stand was triggered by Gaza, so that we are clear. I used to be a member of the Labour Party, and as you said, I was...
Labour Party.
I used to be a member of the Labour Party, but when Keir Starmer said that Israel had the right to cut off water and electricity of the Palestinian people, and I'm Palestinian, I couldn't stay in that party, so I resigned, and I began to think, what else can I do? As the chair of the Palestine Solidarity Campaign, I was at the front of most of the marches that people saw that rose up to 1 million people and so on. But the political elite were not listening to us. They just stood solidly with Israel, and they did not see the Palestinians as human beings. And that is a critical thing, that you should be applying your values equally. You can't, on the one hand, say, I stand with Israel in its self-defense demand, but I don't stand with the Palestinians who are defending themselves from the most barbaric attack that has lasted almost 9 months. So I resigned from the Labour Party, and we started thinking about forming a political party, but Rishi Sunak sprang the election on us very quickly, and so I and a number of other colleagues who were going to be part of this party are standing as independents.
So what would have changed? What would have been different if he called the election 6 months later?
It would have given us time either to build a party of really independence, because there would be no whip. And if I can explain what the whip is to the listeners, some people will know it. In Parliament, there's someone called the chief whip for each party. Mm-hmm. And the chief whip directs people how to vote. They look at behavior and other things, but on certain issues, you have to vote in a particular way. And we saw that with the vote on the ceasefire on Gaza, that the party said which way MPs should vote. That means that people can't exercise either their ethics or their own thinking, or really represent the people in the
party line.
Yeah, they have to do the party. We won't have that. Even though it's a party, it's really a collective of people who share the same values, and they will look at each issue, discuss things in Parliament, and say, do we vote the same way? No, I'm sorry, in my area, this is more important than in your area. But it allows people to have this civilized discussion and to come to a decision about representing your people rather than not. So I will bring, and what I'm aiming to do in Birmingham Selly Oak is to set up an assembly in each ward, which means that I will be meeting people regularly. Every time, once every month or a couple of months, meet, listen to their concerns, take them up to Parliament, and then come back the following time and be accountable. Say to them, this is what I've been able to do, and I'm really sorry, I tried my best on this, it didn't work, I'm continuing on it, or what are the new issues to raise? And it's about all issues that people face. We know in Birmingham here that our city council is bust, and that means that they can't provide the services the most desperate people need. But also that going forward they're going to be raising our council tax by 21%. And in addition to that, it doesn't seem like either party, if they come into government, are not going to look at changing the council tax band. So in other words, there'll be more tax locally for services that have been cut. But then there are the other issues like the NHS and so on to campaign on. I've just this week I went to the strike by junior doctors who are campaigning. They're demanding better pay, better working conditions. So I went to show my support to them, because the NHS is one of the biggest issues when I knock on the doors in Selly Oak. But there are others like housing and the cost of living crisis and so on.
One of the things that people mention about independence, like especially somebody like yourself, is that you really are a one-trick pony, where you're just coming in with that one issue in terms of Palestine. So in Selly Oak, is that a big problem for the people of Selly Oak?
Yeah. First of all, one of the reasons I chose Selly Oak was because the sitting MP was the chief of the chair of Labour Friends of Israel.
See, just on that point, this is something that we as electorate are not asking too many questions of what. Okay. There's a Labour Friends of Israel, there's a Conservative Friends of Israel. Is there a Labour Friends of Palestine group?
Yes, there is. There's a Labour Friends of Palestine in the Middle East, but it's not as strong, well-resourced, and so on, as the Labour Friends of Israel. But Steve McCabe is, my understanding, still the chair of Labour Friends of Israel. So I thought, and I live in Birmingham, I live locally near the border of the area and so on. So I wanted to stand against him, because at the time it was the Gaza issue. But just to illustrate the fact that I'm not a one-trick pony, the people who came to my launch event, yes, came to support me because I'm standing for Palestine at the elections, but they're the same people suffering from the cost of living crisis, the fact they can't get an appointment with a GP, the fact that the quality of water, and I generalize in the UK, but we have no option but Severn Trent in the area we are in. The housing is such a crucial issue, both for people now, and for example, in an area called Druids Heath, the council has a redevelopment scheme which would potentially make a lot of people homeless, and that is not on. So you start from that position of Gaza triggered this, but look at what it's done. It's brought so many people who want to be independent, and many of them, if not all of them, are professional people with real life experience who can bring something to bear in Parliament, whereas some of the MPs that you see now actually rising even to Secretary of State and Shadow Secretary of State have not worked outside Parliament. They started off as interns, they went to become researchers, they worked in the party and so on, and suddenly they are MPs. We can bring these skills, life experience that we've had to all of these issues. And so in Selly Oak, you walk around and you'll be surprised at how many windows have the Palestinian flag, because they stand with the people of Gaza. But that's not all of them by any means. However, it's important that the person who is going to be the MP for an area is not only aware, and I'm a local.
Represents all the issues.
Represents them all. And I stress the word local, because Steve McCabe decided not to continue to seek election again. What did the Labour Party do? You would expect the local Labour Party to nominate someone, but actually the executive committee of had decided to parachute in a former colonel in the army/navy who had been fighting in Afghanistan and who had won bravery medals. And you ask yourself, what does someone get a bravery medal for? And it's not for handing out candy to the children in Afghanistan. So it's quite and where is party democracy? There are so many councillors they could have picked from and brought them in, but they've got and he has no profile at all. You can't find anything out about him by Googling his name, and he has no political experience, and he says he wants to serve the community. Well, why don't you go and actually become a consultant to the Labour Party about defence issues? That's the right thing. This is how you can offer the experience from the army, whereas I bring the experience of real life to the representation of the people in Selly Oak.
You know, in this election, as you know, it's also a lot of fraction in divisiveness in the communities as well in these awards. And one of the things that we've picked up now over the last few years, and especially in this election, is the rise of the right-wing ideology which is creeping into the mainstream with the rise of Reform and Nigel Farage. I mean, there's something quite weird happening out there, which I've mentioned to many people. The way Nigel Farage is being put on a pedestal and being given so much airtime, which he really doesn't deserve, because he really has no political credentials as such. He's never ever won a seat in Parliament. Yes, he was a Euro MP, but his party isn't very strong. They're no different to many, probably the Green Party in terms of they've got more candidates, they've got more election history, credibility. But why does he get all the attention now?
I think maybe you take it back to the nature of the media, and a lot of it is right-wing media, who would be looking for someone to tackle right-wing issues. Brexit was one of them. It wasn't, I know, and I respect people's vote. There were left-wing and right-wing and so on who voted for Brexit. They need to reflect now and see whether it was the right thing for the country to actually leave 500 million, a market of 500 million people, but also people with whom you share so much culture that to have been part of it was actually a good thing. And I believe if it wasn't for COVID, we would now be feeling the impact, or would be able to show exactly what the impact of Brexit was. So first of all, I think there's a lot of right-wing media who are looking for people to campaign and to work on right-wing issues. Nigel Farage, is let's be clear, a charismatic person. He knows how to frame things that touch the sort of sensitivities,
Emotions of people.
Yeah, in certain people. But he's a one-trick pony, which is immigration.
Yeah.
That what he wants is no more immigration, and other people who have been here a long time could be encouraged to go back to wherever they come from. What they don't start from on that issue is to celebrate the contribution of immigrants to this country. If it wasn't for the immigrants,
That's why it's dangerous, isn't it?
Absolutely.
The way the whole argument is being framed, the way he's been given the airtime to actually spout out his hatred of migrants.
Yeah, I mean, they did exclude him from some of the leaders' debates, i.e. leader, not sort of deputy leader, and he's not happy about that. But they've also not had George Galloway join them. He leads a party.
He's probably more deserving of airtime than...
he himself is an MP.
Yes.
Why not let him come? And of course, part of it is to do with personality, but also to do with the issue of Gaza.
Ideology as well.
And ideology, yes, but the issue of Gaza. But they want to put that to one side and focus on what they think are vote-winning policies, which in fact... They're becoming far more detached from the people with the policies that they are talking about. And what policies? If you remember, in what Labour has got now are 6 starting points, really. Now, you normally provide detail of what you're going to do. But when you say, my starting point is a stable economy.
Yeah, what does that mean?
I can say that.
These are just catchphrases.
We're going to... employs 6,000 more teachers. Do you know what the question about that should be asked of every potential Labour MP is? Yeah. How many per school is that? And do you know how many? It's 1 for every 3 schools. So that's hardly touching the service. It's not 1 per school even. It's 1. So you can couch things and present them in a particular way. The NHS, we're going to have 40,000 more GP appointments. Why not 80,000? Is that going to solve the problem? And if you need to bring people in to refill these gaps we have in the NHS, why not commit to doing that? Because what I think the word that's been missing, or the phrase from this election, is the provision of service. If you start off from the point of view that this is a civilized society, the public services are provided, you pay taxes, you get public services back to you, and from that, if you start saying, I'm not going to produce the services, then what kind of a society are we? And therefore, going back to the Birmingham City Council issues, you should be providing services to the weakest.
I remember when I was growing up and all the previous election campaigns, they were focusing on issues of substance which were affecting people, like social housing, jobs, things that, they were more specific about the economy. It was perhaps, about the NHS. But now it's more style over substance.
Without a doubt. Yeah. Without a doubt. And that's where, as independents, you are the people's representative. So it's not about just spouting out. The person who's the Labour Party candidate, whenever he was asked questions at one of these hustings, the answer is what the party says. Yeah. But the party, as you said, it's all play on words rather than substance. And I want to serve you. Well, if you go for public office, you do want to serve. So that should be taken for granted.
But look, let's just look at this again. Are the politicians, if you look at the mainstream, especially at the top end of the hierarchy, are they really serving the people? Or are they serving their donors? Are they serving the technocrats who are, giving them the donations and giving them the support behind the scenes?
Look, we've seen what happened during COVID with the Conservative Party and the VIP lanes for people and so on. So to partly answer your question, this is what the party structure and the lobbies structure can do, which is that even before an MP is elected, they try and quote them on the issue of Palestine. The pro-Israel groups take them on a trip to Israel to show them what wonderful state it is, and so on, in the hope that when they come back, they'll be committed to supporting Israel. In America, the gun companies do the same. Now, so that's allowed. That's the point. You can't take money, etc., and you have to declare it. But they've been in these positions, some of them for 20, 30 years, and there are ways of making sure that you are transparent, but still being influenced by these lobbies. But then the other thing is, I think there are, and let's be fair to the ones who do serve. I had in Northfield, which is where I live, a fantastic MP. Not this right, the one we got now is awful. The one before, called Richard Burden, who was truly Burden, not Bergen, who was truly an MP for a constituency. If you needed help, if you needed to consult, you could meet him. And he was also obviously campaigning on certain issues more than on other issues. But then you look at the others, and you find that a lot of them are never seen in the constituency, or at least
until election time.
Until election time. So they've been out door knocking now.
Yeah.
They want to be re-elected, and they'll disappear for 5 years.
Yes.
And actually, when you go to their website to find out what they do, you find actually some of them are missing, missing in action, not in action even. So this is where we started the conversation about this is a unique. This is this election has a lot of new features. And you are right. We haven't been through one where people are asking, who do I vote for? Because I'm not going to vote either Labour or the Conservative. And that is where, obviously, you hope that some of the minor parties, good parties, might get more votes. But equally, this is where independents, who will truly represent without a party whip, should have a good chance of winning.
You know, what this has done is highlighted a whole series of deep-rooted problems that we have in our society, in our country, from an election sort of point of view. Number one, this whole first past the post system that we have is completely flawed because it favors a two-party system. Yeah. We now live in a society where it's not as clear-cut as whether you favor Labour or Conservative, or like in America, the Republicans or the Democrats. Yeah. People have a huge varied interest and support different parties, different factions. So without a proportional representation, these other parties do not get any real chance of success, right? Even independents on a first past the post system, unless you have a very big following. Let's face it, George Galloway, as a very charismatic personality, where he goes into an area as an independent, he's got a very high chance of winning.
But he's not an independent, just to be clear. He is the leader of a party. So
what I meant.
I know what you exactly meant. Take Jeremy Corbyn.
Yeah, Jeremy Corbyn is now
independent. Take him. He's an independent. Yeah. He served his constituency, truly served his constituency for about 40 years. He's having to stand as an independent, and we wish him well. I hope he wins. If he doesn't win, it's because he's not the Labour candidate, which would be quite. I think, I agree with you that the two-party system and the first past the post is not ideal, and I'll explain why I use that phrase. When I've been asked by people abroad about the British political system, I actually say the nice thing about it is that in each, there are 650 seats. Mm-hmm. In each one, people stand, and whoever wins represent that area first. It's not like proportional representation where it depends on what the party percentage polling is. If you connect with the people, it's actually not a bad system. Mm-hmm. The problem is that it is the once every 5 years we go and get the vote, and then we go back to Parliament to represent the party, and we represent the party to the people, not the people to Parliament.
That's right. That's what I'm saying. The main flaws that which people are now realizing, and also the thing about the big business and the technocrats behind the scenes who are funding these politicians, their interests get represented.
Yeah. And add to that, so we go back to the difference between an independent person and someone who's from a party. These people fund the party, so there's an infrastructure.
Yes.
And that infrastructure, if I were, say, a Conservative or a Labour candidate, would be behind me.
Yes.
It would support me to produce leaflets, text, to summarize positions, and all of that. And this is a critical point, they have data. So in each constituency, over the years, maybe decades, they've collected
It's
data
like a business
on,
they've
on,
built
on
there.
where,
Yeah.
but it is the critical issue of who lives in each house and how would they vote.
Yes.
The independent starts from nothing.
Yes.
So you have to knock on every door to try and talk to people and try and convince them. And it is what you're trying to say to them is what the parties say to them on the doorstep is, don't you think it's a waste to vote for an independent? It's a waste of a vote, isn't it? Well, actually, no, because unless we start making a change, let's assume we get 10, 15 independents in this time. Let's assume that. What does that mean? First of all, they will not be tied by a whip. They will be able to question, not from a party political basis, to question the Prime Minister on a Wednesday. They'll be able to question the Foreign Secretary on whenever. They'll be doing it for their constituents only. And that's really quite an important difference.
That's what politics is meant to be.
Which is what it's meant to be. So let's assume these 15 succeed in showing their people that it's good to vote independent. In 5 years' time, maybe we could get more of them. And over a period of time, the system we have, which I know is not 100% safe, if you like, in representation, could become the one that brings the person who truly represents the constituency into parliament. But a lot of hard work is needed.
As I've said, this current system needs liquidating. We need to go back to the drawing board and bring the interests of the people back into parliament, not the interest of the few imposed on the many. Professor Kamel, I wish you all the best on July the 4th. It's been an honor to have you on our program.
Thank you so much.
And as I've said, we eagerly anticipate the results on July the 5th to see what the political landscape will be looking like. And it's going to be a very interesting night indeed.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and I hope the people of Selly Oak will look at my leaflet and what I promised to deliver, and then vote, having really learned. And I urge, and let me please say, I urge people who normally don't go out and vote, please vote, even if it isn't for me. Let's use this important right to vote to send the right people to Parliament.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
That's a great message. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much indeed.